there comes a moment when staying the same becomes more painful than changing. You feel it. You've outgrown the old version of yourself, and yet, letting it die terrifies you. We all carry pieces of ourselves that no longer fit. Old wounds. Old identities. Old stories we've held onto for years. The truth is, trying to rebuild your life while protecting the current version of yourself will keep you stuck. Stoic philosophy teaches that transformation begins in silence, not in the noise. In the quiet space where you finally step away from distraction and face yourself honestly. That is where you confront what's broken. That is where you choose who you want to become. That is where you take back the wheel of your life. This is not a video about motivation. This is about the truth that will help you destroy the old you, so the real you can finally emerge. Part 1. Solitude reveals the truth about you. You cannot rebuild your life until you face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Solitude is not loneliness. It is the environment where truth finally becomes unavoidable. When the noise of the world fades, when you are left alone with your thoughts, your habits, your fears, and your unfiltered reality, that is when the real you steps forward. This is exactly why most people are afraid of being alone. Solitude forces you to confront everything you've tried to bury: distractions, addictions, broken relationships, and the quiet voice that has always known you are living beneath your potential. But solitude doesn't punish. It reflects. It replaces the illusion of comfort with the clarity of truth. And without that clarity, transformation is impossible. Most people don't realize how much of their identity is built on noise rather than intention. You act a certain way because others expect it. You believe certain things simply because you were taught to accept them. You maintain habits not because they serve you, but because they are familiar. When you are surrounded by people and activity, you unconsciously perform a version of yourself designed to fit the room. But when you are alone, the performance ends. The real you steps forward. And in that space, the lies you tell yourself become harder to believe. I don't have time to change. I'm not ready yet. Things will get better on their own. In solitude, you can no longer hide from these lies. You see your life not as you wish it were, but as it truly is. And that truth, however uncomfortable, is the beginning of freedom. Solitude exposes the habits quietly destroying your potential. It shows how often you choose comfort over responsibility. How easily you are moved by emotional triggers you never learned to control. It reveals the relationships that drain your peace, the goals you've abandoned, and the reasons you've used to justify standing still. Some people refuse to see themselves clearly. But pain is information. That pain shows what needs healing, what needs changing, and what needs letting go. When you sit in solitude, you take accountability in a way that the noise of the world never allows. The truth becomes undeniable, and you can no longer tolerate living beneath what you are capable of. Solitude is not where you lose yourself. It is where you find yourself. And when you meet yourself honestly, you gain the power to rebuild with intention, with discipline, and with dignity. The destruction of the old you begins in the silence. And that silence, though frightening, is the thing that will finally set you free. Part 2. You must kill your old patterns first. The new cannot grow on top of the behaviors that are destroying you. You cannot rebuild your life while still feeding the habits that broke you in the first place. Most people try to add to themselves new routines, new goals, new environments, without ever removing the patterns that sabotage everything they attempt. And so they find themselves repeating the same painful cycles, wondering why nothing changes. Stoic philosophy teaches that destruction must precede creation. You must first identify the behaviors that weaken you, the unconscious responses that drain your energy and keep you trapped. Your old patterns are not just habits. They are an identity you have outgrown. the way you react under stress, the excuses you repeat, the distractions you choose, the people you tolerate even when they drain you. These are all extensions of a former self. And if you keep living by these reflexes, you are choosing to keep the old you alive. The old you is the very reason you feel stuck, exhausted, and unfulfilled. To rebuild, you must be willing to let that version of yourself die. Most people don't change because they try to negotiate with their old habits. They say, I'll cut back this week. I'll start next month. I'll stop eventually, just not right now. But real destruction requires precision, not negotiation. You cannot compromise with procrastination. You cannot reason with self-doubt. You cannot think your way out of a behavior problem. The Stoics believed in removing what is unnecessary with decisive clarity. Without this decisiveness, transformation remains a fantasy. Old patterns are powerful precisely because they are comfortable, even when they make you miserable. They are familiar. And your internal resistance will always choose the familiar over the unknown. That is why the old you clings to routines that hurt you, to protect the ego from the discomfort of real growth. But real growth begins when you choose evolution over reputation. When you acknowledge that the life you want requires a fundamentally different version of yourself than the one resisting change. There comes a point where continuing your old patterns becomes more painful than letting them go. When that moment arrives, and it will, you will finally understand what the Stoics meant by living intentionally. You stop acting out of habit and start acting out of purpose. You stop letting emotions drive and begin choosing the behaviors aligned with your future. That is the beginning of truly destroying the old you, not as an aesthetic shift, but as the complete dismantling of the mental blocks that held you captive. You cannot rebuild on a foundation you refuse to touch. Once you remove the patterns that no longer serve you, you create the space, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, for a stronger, wiser, more disciplined version of yourself to emerge. Destruction is not harm. It is liberation. Part 3. The new self requires discomfort. Growth begins the moment you become comfortable being uncomfortable. Most people want to become stronger without doing anything that challenges them. They want confidence without risk, discipline without resistance, transformation without sacrifice. But the Stoics understood a fundamental truth: the version of you that stays comfortable is the version of you that stays the same. Discomfort is not a punishment. It is the birthplace of your new identity. Your old self was built in comfort, and that is exactly why it cannot take you where you want to go. Every time you choose the easy path, you reinforce the limits that held you back. You protect your ego at the cost of expanding your capacity. Discomfort, on the other hand, forces you to confront your limits and stretch beyond them. It is the tension between who you are now and who you could become. The discomfort you feel when you enter unfamiliar territory is not a warning sign, it is proof that you are stepping into the version of yourself your old life was never brave enough to become. When you feel that tension, your mind is expanding. Your character is strengthening. Your emotional resilience is growing. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberate exposure to hardship. Not as punishment or masochism, but to train the mind to remain stable under pressure. The person who avoids discomfort becomes fragile. The person who embraces it becomes unshakable. Every meaningful transformation demands passing through resistance. You cannot build discipline without doing things you don't want to do. You cannot build emotional strength without facing the fears that paralyze you. You cannot gain clarity without walking through confusion first. These uncomfortable moments form the architecture of your new identity. Without them, change remains a wish instead of a reality. If you only do what feels comfortable, you will repeat the life you already know. And if the life you already know is not enough, then comfort cannot be your guide. Discomfort is the compass. It points directly toward the places where your potential is hiding. Once you understand this, you stop running from hard things and start seeking the challenges that will transform you. The new you is forged in difficulty, sharpened by resistance, and built through deliberate strength. Your comfort zone is where the old you lives. Discomfort is where the new you is born. Every time you choose discomfort over avoidance, you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. Part 4. Rebuilding requires discipline, not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. Most people wait for motivation like it's a signal from the universe telling them it's finally time to change. And motivation can feel powerful, for a moment. It rises when life feels inspiring and collapses the moment things become difficult. If you depend on motivation to rebuild yourself, you will quit every single time discomfort arrives. The Stoics understood this. That is why they built their lives on discipline, not feelings. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. It is the decision to act even when you are tired, uncertain, afraid, or uninspired. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It only cares about who you said you would be. When you choose discipline, you choose long-term identity over short-term emotion. And that is the foundation every strong life is built upon. Motivation gives you a push. Discipline gives you a path. Motivation may start you for a day, discipline keeps you consistent for a lifetime. When you rely on motivation, you become a slave to your emotional state. When you rely on discipline, you become the architect of your reality. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up every morning excited to carry the weight of an empire. He woke up and did what was required because his identity demanded it. He practiced daily action, training, reflecting, writing, not because it felt natural, but because repetition builds inner strength. If you only work when you feel motivated, your rebuilding will never be meaningful. Because rebuilding requires waking up early even when the bed feels like an anchor. Staying on task when destruction feels easier than progress. Choosing growth over comfort, even in the smallest moments. These small acts of discipline accumulate into a new identity over time. You stop forcing yourself to act, and become the kind of person who naturally does what needs to be done. Discipline is not punishment. It is freedom. Freedom from excuses. Freedom from the inconsistent moods that have controlled your life. Every disciplined action is a promise to your future self, a declaration that you refuse to stay the same. Each small victory strengthens your belief in who you are becoming. Motivation might inspire you. Discipline transforms you. Rebuilding yourself requires stability, consistency, and repetition. When you can no longer rise and fall with your emotions, when you show up regardless of how you feel, you finally gain the power to build your life from the ground up. Part 5. Protect your environment while rebuilding. You cannot become someone new while living in the environment that created the old you. Your surroundings shape you in ways you rarely notice. The people you interact with. The spaces you spend time in. The content you consume. The energy of your daily routine. All of it is constantly programming your nervous system, reinforcing either your growth or your destruction. If your environment is filled with distraction, negativity, or people who quietly drag you back into old patterns, transformation becomes almost impossible. The Stoics understood this deeply. The quality of your environment determines the quality of your mind. Your environment is either reinforcing your growth or reinforcing your old self. When you are rebuilding, every detail matters. The music you listen to becomes the beliefs you absorb. The habits you observe in others become the habits you normalize. The emotional climate around you becomes the emotional climate within you. If you are surrounded by people who settle for less, it becomes harder to demand more from yourself. If your spaces are chaotic and cluttered, your mind becomes the same. Rebuilding requires intentional curation of your surroundings. You must decide who gets access to your energy. What influences your mind? Which environments support your evolution and which ones silently pull you back? This may mean limiting conversations that drain you. Reducing the digital noise consuming your attention. Designing your physical space to reflect the person you are becoming. Some environments are simply incompatible with the new you. They are soaked with your old habits, and your old identity feels comfortable there. That is why these spaces will sabotage your progress without you even realizing it. Sometimes rebuilding requires stepping away. Not because you are better than others, but because you are becoming different. And different demands distance. Your environment is a silent teacher. It shapes your decisions, your discipline, your vision. When you protect it, you protect your future. When you neglect it, you fall back into the gravity of who you used to be. Creating a supportive environment is not about perfectionism. It is about alignment, allowing your surroundings to support who you are choosing to be. When your environment matches your vision, you don't have to fight yourself every day. The path becomes clearer. The work becomes easier. The new you has room to breathe. Stop living in spaces that keep the old you comfortable. A clean environment, a peaceful digital space. A supportive social circle, these things do more for your transformation than you will ever fully understand. Protect the person you are becoming. Part 6, you must outgrow people, without apology. Not everyone is meant to stay in the next chapter of your life. There comes a moment when you realize some people were only meant to walk with you up to a certain point. Not because they are bad people, but because the version of you they connect with no longer exists. You feel it in conversations that no longer resonate. In relationships that drain rather than strengthen you. In the quiet knowing that you've grown while things around you remain the same. The Stoics remind us that life is a constant unfolding. As you evolve, growth will always create distance, and distance will always be misunderstood. Some people will take your evolution as a personal rejection. They will assume your silence is judgment. They will see your boundaries as coldness and your ambition as arrogance. But the truth is simpler than that. You have simply outgrown a dynamic that can no longer support your growth. When you rise, the gravity of your old environment pulls hard. Not out of malice, but out of familiarity. People cling to the version of you they are comfortable with, even when that version was built on fear and self-doubt. Outgrowing people is one of the most painful and most necessary parts of transformation. You will feel guilt. You've been conditioned to believe that loyalty means staying. You will feel the fear of wondering who will be left when you walk away. You will feel resistance because comfort whispers that maybe things aren't really that bad. But your loyalty to your growth must outweigh your loyalty to anyone else's expectations. You owe no one an apology for becoming. Not an explanation. Not a justification. Some people are attached to your limitations because your limitations make them feel safe. Your insecurities make them comfortable. Your lack of boundaries makes their lives easier. When you start growing, when you start saying no, choosing yourself, demanding more from life, they feel threatened. Not by you. By the version of you who stayed small and predictable. They love the old you because the old you asked for less. That version is gone now. And you cannot resurrect it to make others feel comfortable. Outgrowing people does not mean you look down on them. It means you finally stop shrinking yourself to match them. You are not rejecting them as people, you are rejecting the behaviors, the cycles, and the stagnation they represent. You are not acting superior. You are becoming who you were always meant to be. Growth requires elevation. And elevation requires releasing what you can no longer carry. If someone is meant for your future, they will grow with you, not resent your evolution. The moment you stop apologizing for outgrowing people is the moment you stop wasting your energy explaining why you don't tolerate disrespect. You stop defending your boundaries. You stop justifying your dreams. You stop minimizing your ambition. When you withdraw from relationships that drain your energy, your self-respect rises. When you walk away from people who cannot meet you where you are going, your path becomes clear. You are not recruiting anyone for a journey they haven't chosen. You are simply moving, and inviting only those willing to keep pace. Outgrowing people is not just emotional. It is environmental. It is spiritual. It is energetic. There will always be people who say, *, you've changed. Good. Change is the point. Evolution is the point. Growth is the point. Your transformation threatens people who refuse to transform themselves. They want the old you because the old you made them feel comfortable. But comfort is not your mission. Growth is. You do not need their approval to evolve. You do not need their permission to rise. Assume nothing about who you are becoming has any obligation to the pool you are leaving behind. You can love people and still move on. You can care for them and still set firm boundaries. You can remember the connection and still recognize that the relationship has reached its limit. The Stoics taught that clinging to what must pass is the root of suffering. Release with grace. Go forward with dignity. Never betray yourself simply to preserve someone else's comfort. Your future requires a different version of you. And that version will attract different people, ones who speak the language of growth. People who challenge you instead of drain you. People who respect your boundaries instead of testing them. People who celebrate your evolution instead of fearing it. Outgrowing people is not the old you dying. It is preparation, for clarity, for self-respect, for relationships that match your new identity. As painful as it is, letting go becomes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. For the person you are becoming. Stop apologizing for human evolution. ###. Part 7. Rebirth is a daily choice, not a one-time event. Most people think change happens in a single dramatic moment. A breakthrough. A crisis. A New Year's resolution. A powerful realization. But real transformation is not a single event. It is the slow, steady rewiring of your identity through repeated choices, made every day, often when no one is watching. The Stoics understood that character is built by what you practice daily, not occasionally. You do not become a different person overnight. You become different through the thousands of small decisions that silently shape you. The old you doesn't disappear in one moment of clarity. It fades gradually. Every time you resist an old habit, you weaken the identity that held you back. Every time you act with discipline, you step further into the person you are becoming. Every time you choose honesty over avoidance, clarity over confusion, growth over comfort, you are participating in your own transformation. Transformation is simply choosing the new behavior more often than the old one. And rebirth is difficult precisely because it requires consistency long after the excitement of a new beginning fades. There will be days when you feel strong. And days when you feel like collapsing back into old patterns. The Stoics believed that the measure of a person is not how they act when it's easy, but how they act when it's difficult. That is where the real rebuilding happens. Your future self is being built quietly in the background of every ordinary decision. It is built when you wake up early even though you want to stay in bed. It is built when you choose to focus over distraction. It is built when you speak with integrity instead of people-pleasing. It is built every time you do the uncomfortable thing simply because it is aligned with who you want to be. Transformation is not dramatic. It is deliberate. And most of it happens when no one is watching. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to become the person you want to be. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. The Stoics emphasized the urgency of the present, asking themselves, if I could leave life right now, would that determine what I do and say and think? What becomes possible when you realize life is happening now, and that postponing your evolution only extends your suffering? Every day gives you a chance to decide who you are. Not with words. Not with promises. But with discipline. With habits. With repeated choices that, day by day, make the transformation irreversible. You no longer try to change. You simply live as the new you. Rebirth is not a destination you reach. It is a practice you return to every single day. As long as you keep choosing your highest version, imperfectly, inconsistently, but repeatedly, you are already rising. Final words, you were built for this. Everything you have walked through has been preparation. Every moment of solitude. Every difficult choice. Every boundary you held. Every step you took into discomfort. Every relationship you outgrew. Every habit you dismantled. None of it was wasted. All of it was building the foundation of the person you are becoming. Transformation is never accidental. It is intentional. It is painful. It is deeply personal. The Stoics understood that growth requires shedding what no longer serves you, even when it hurts. Even when it makes you feel alone. Even when the world doesn't understand. Rebuilding yourself is not about becoming someone else. It is about finally becoming who you were always meant to be. It will cost you. Old environments. Old standards. Old versions of comfort. It will require releasing people who cannot grow with you. It will push you to confront yourself with honesty, with discipline, with courage. And in every uncomfortable moment, you are moving closer to your potential. You are not starting over. You are starting stronger. Today, right now, you have the power to choose differently. To think differently. To act differently. The rebirth you seek is already happening inside you. With every decision you make, the old you weakens and the real you grows stronger. Keep going. Your future self is waiting, and has been waiting a long time. If this message moved something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, tell us, what is the first thing you are choosing to destroy in order to rebuild?